like the video starts with like this taco that's dripping, and then I do like dip shots and cheese pulls with nachos, and it's like you have all these visual elements in the video of all the different courses of food that they have. Or like I think there was like churros that like dipped them in like the like chocolate or whatever. And like this video is like so sensual, it's weird. Where I'm like, I know it's tacos and nachos,
Did you have to,
but
like,
it's like, oh,
did
this
you
is
lean
a little...
into it? Choose like
Yeah.
Usher song, or did you like go
I
like
should have, right? Like, some old school Usher.
Welcome back to the Breed Out Podcast. I'm your host, Richie Tevlin. This is Evan Blum, not Bloom. Joined tonight by the entity, the food influencer of the year from Philadelphia, JoshEatsPhilly. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. So we're going to kind of jump right into this conversation. We've been talking for the last 45 minutes basically in the podcast outside the studio. So let's just kind of keep going with what we're talking about, just millennials.
Yeah, millennials, Gen Z. But yeah, I mean, I'll introduce myself a little bit just to get started. So JoshEatsPhilly. I started on Instagram. I opened my account in 2011 as a very young person. And I did what everyone else was doing back in 2011, opening an Instagram account, posting really crappy photos with really bad filters. And it's just so funny to see where things have come to today versus where it was back then. Because back then it was all of, these super grainy photos. Everything was super emo, using like black and white filters. It's like, oh, let me get a cup of coffee and, with the latte art, take like a overhead picture and put like a weird filter and then put like some song lyrics as the caption because that's what we just did back then.
Hashtag coffee.
Hashtag coffee, right? Hashtag latte art. And then even with, when you talk about things like beer, you go to a brewery and you get like this really awkward angle of the brewery and you're like, this is my photo. This is so artistic. Because I feel like when Instagram started, everyone thought we were artists because, why not? Like that's what we all thought was going on with artists and photographers or whatever. So for me, like when it comes to the concept of influencing, I would not consider myself an influencer whatsoever back then. Like I'm just another kid on the street taking photos just like everyone else, putting them on Instagram, really into the void. Because like, I barely had any followers. I had like some friends from kindergarten following me and just some random
good old
people.
Days, just shooting stuff off.
Exactly, just shoot it out there. It's like, okay, we'll see what happens. But it's funny. So, I was doing it for a while, just like as a hobby. And, my brother said to me like, hey, did you know people do like food vlogging like as an occupation? I'm like, what are you even talking about? And this is like back in 2015, 2014, 2015, 2016. And he would share with me videos from like Devour Power in New York City. And they're like doing these like pictures of like these massive sandwiches or like cookies or this or that was like super over the top and just super crazy. And then he'd share with me videos from like places in Miami or Los Angeles and these like Instagram accounts for these people that were, I guess, influencers. But again, back then we didn't really have like the language for it. They're just like, oh, these people are just like, I guess, food bloggers. Like, I don't know. Like they're just taking all these crazy pictures.
You eat 8,000 calories a day.
Exactly. And again, like I feel like that era of Instagram, like that 2015, 2016, everything was 10,000 calories. Everything was super over the top. Like no one cared about the health.
It was the man versus food era. It was just
Boom.
like how much food can you get.
Exactly. It's like what's the most over the top burger that you can create, right? So my brother's like, why don't you just do the same thing in Philly? Like, there's great places in Philly that are obviously doing great things, and like no one's doing that type of food porn. So you should try it. And there were other food bloggers out there, they were, taking pictures, doing the thing. But I was like, yeah, let me try to do these like kind of more over the top photos. These things are going to like, when the person looks at it, it's going to like grab their attention.
Yep.
So, one of my first photos from like that era of Instagram, I went to an ice cream shop called Weckerly's, which is still in business now. Thank goodness. Cause they were about to close. They're back in business. It's all good. They do these ice creams where it's like you have an ice cream cone with 2 scoops of ice cream and an ice cream sandwich on top of it. So it's like this massive, crazy, wild thing. And I was like, let me just throw that on Instagram and see what happens. So then all of a sudden I go from like getting, I don't know, like 10, 20 likes to like, I got like 500 likes. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like people actually want to see this stuff. So I start like, quasi doing research, like, okay, how can I find like these places that are already doing really cool things in Philly and featuring those places and seeing if I can get a photo and go into these places. A lot of what I would do, I would like even just go to happy hours at different places because it was an easy way to get like a lot of food for like a low amount of money. Get a beer, get some wings, put it on Instagram. Like, oh man, this place is doing like a $3 wing special for happy hour, right? So it's just like a combination of like those over the top places, doing like those little happy hours and just like posting more and more and more and more and more. And it just became a snowball effect where people started finding me. I see people in my comments, they're like tagging their friends. I'm like, that's weird. People are DMing me like, oh my God, I see you're all over the city. You know, what's the best place in Fishtown? What's the place in Northern Liberties or whatever? So I'm like, man, people actually care what I'm saying? This is weird. Like, and it's like, at that point, I'm like, well, maybe this is like influence. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I'm just like out here taking pictures, but people actually care.
About the verbiage of like influencer that didn't exist back then. Like, even the verbiage of Instagrammable, where like every business owners now have to like make things that are Instagrammable.
Yeah.
And you were taking like this like very cool looking ice cream sandwich or like these happy hour things and just like.
Yeah, I'm like throwing it out on social media, like whatever. And it's like, I think back then when people thought of the word influencer, they thought like Kim Kardashian.
Yes.
And that has all the connotations. For some positive, a lot negative, you know, whatever. So it's like, I never saw myself as that. Like, I wasn't like posting to like promote a product. In my mind, I didn't think I was doing that, right? But that's actually what was happening. You know, I'm posting a place and people are actually going.
You were
showcasing
was like such
small
a fun businesses,
concept,
you know?
right?
Kim Kardashian was like showcasing her
assets.
Her assets. That's the word, right? Yeah, so she's showcasing something else. Or even like, I mean, she's a good example though, because then she has all these like products and stuff she's advertising. But like when I started, I didn't see it as that. I was like, oh, you know, I'm just going to different places. The first time I had like a paid partnership, and I was like so hyped. I get an email from Dunkin' Donuts. I'm like, what? Dunkin' Donuts is like emailing me? This is crazy.
Were you even looking for that, or just kind of?
And what year was this?
This was like 2016.
2016.
Yeah. So it was a paid partnership, and guess how much Dunkin' paid me for my first paid partnership?
So going through some of this, I would imagine
a $25 gift card.
I would imagine like $200 to $300.
A $50 gift card.
$50 gift card. That's crazy.
And they had me tag it as a paid partnership on a $50 gift card.
But you probably did that and you were like, let's go.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I didn't know. And I was like, again, like there were so few of us, just even, you know, nationally, where like, I wasn't asking someone, is this a fair deal from Dunkin' Donuts? I was just like, oh, $50? Free coffee? I'm in. So like, I'm out here taking pictures of Dunkin' Donuts coffee for $50 gift cards, thinking I was doing something, right? I'm like, this is awesome.
And then you might have been back then. I mean, you were,
this was,
like
yeah,
you're saying, like in Philly,
ago.
there weren't other people doing it. So like, maybe it sounds like, you know, they kind of scammed you, but like
they did scam me.
And they probably
got a lot more value back then out of you doing that than if you were to take a picture even now just doing it. Because there just were less people doing it.
For sure, like it's so saturated now, and it's crazy to think about because when I had done that, I did get people like, "Oh my God, Dunkin' Donuts reached out to you," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, like that's crazy, right?" Not realizing I got paid not even $50 cash gift card. So you know, after a while, I'm like, you know, just doing it, and other brands are reaching out. And one thing I had mentioned to you guys was like the first like I guess beer brand to reach out to me was like Bud Light. And when Bud Light reached out, like I, you know, was just like, okay, cool, Bud Light, this is awesome. And they offered me an insane amount of money. And this was again earlier on. I would say this was like 2018 or something like that. So, like, I maybe had $10,000 at that point. I don't know. And they offered me, like, an insane amount of money. It was just like, what the what? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And then that's when I think I was starting to realize, I'm like, this is real. Like, you can actually monetize this. You can actually make money with these, like, different brand partnerships you can get.
It's almost like, I mean, you were just posting pictures, and then they... Even when you say your friends were like, "Oh my God, you're getting paid by Dunkin'," and like it was a bad deal, it almost like legitimizes, like, you know, these massive brands, these people that are thinking about marketing all the time, they're realizing the value of you, and it was almost like maybe
it's a snowball effect.
The value that you had
with Bud Light or like with a bigger brand. Did you feel pressure for the first time to then deliver?
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. What did that feel like?
So it was so hard because, well, honestly, I really shouldn't say this, but it was really hard to work with them. Because, like, I would send them content. They're like, we don't like it. Like, dang. They were also very picky. So I had, like, reshoots and re-edits and this and that. And I was like, okay, this is, like, super stressful. But then in the back of my head, I'm like, well, they're paying me, so I really can't say no, right? And it was one of those things. It was, like, one of my first, like, really, really big gigs. I'm like, you know what? Let me just, like, suck it up and do it, you know, post it. And the funny thing is, the post flop. It did so bad. And I was so like, what? Like I put all this effort into it, all these reshoots, and then they approved it and they flopped, and I was like so nervous because I'm thinking, man, like the post didn't even do well. Like, are they even gonna pay me? And they paid me. I was like, okay, that's weird. But it's one of those things, like when you do these like paid partnerships, you never know what's gonna happen.
We talk about this all the time. That like the people that are successful, like they're chasing all these trends and they're trying to follow other people. And the people that are successful, like they have a higher quality product than everybody else, but they're also they're doing stuff on their own accord, you know, like they're
Right.
following exactly what they want to do.
Exactly.
So you, at this time, you're building up your brand as Josh Eats Philly. You were like creating your style. So for them to come in and like do something different than your
Yes.
style, everybody looks at it and just like, this is clearly a paid advertisement. This is
Exactly.
not Josh Eats Philly.
It doesn't feel authentic.
Doing this. This is like clearly Bud Light came in and said like,
Right.
post these pictures and we'll pay you.
It's so funny you say that because at the time I'm like, if they wanted it to be so specific, they should just bought an ad. Like they should have just like, you know, got a Facebook ad, you know, done the whole thing. Because I mean, that's what it ended up looking like. And it's so funny you say that because it's something I think about when it comes to like authenticity. So, you know, when we're thinking about like social media from like 5, 6, 7 years ago, a lot of these brands didn't understand social media. They thought they did because they were like, we're going to reach out to an influencer, but they were so specific in what they wanted. It's like, you know, you may as well just hire an ad agency to create an ad if that's what you want. If you want to work with an influencer, you need to let that person, you know, use their voice and share their voice. Because if they don't and it looks like an ad, it's going to flop. So
it's like
that
big marketing trying to do guerrilla marketing.
Exactly.
Like if it's guerrilla marketing, it has to look and feel and truly be guerrilla marketing.
Right, 100%. And it's one of those things where I feel like that's something I personally have learned just over the course of this time. And like, you know, I still obviously do like paid partnerships and ads, but I want them to look like very authentic. I want them to look very native to my content.
It's a Josh Eats Philly ad. It's not just a photo you're posting.
Exactly. So like recently, I got to work with McDonald's, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah,
like
those were cool. Those are cool videos. You're putting out some cool videos with McDonald's.
I know, isn't it wild? I got people back onto McDonald's, right? Like, it's crazy. Like it's one of those things.
Imagine that's different than a $50 McDonald's gift card now.
yeah. No, McDonald's is really good, but it's crazy. Like when they first reached out to me, it was like via a DM. I gave me a DM for McDonald's corporate account with the blue check and everything. I had to like pinch myself. It's like one of those things that's so aspirational. Like I remember, what was it?
You asked him about Cactus Jack.
Oh, I should have, right? But it's like it was crazy because for me, like as a kid, you know, you're like 5 years old, you know, you're with your parents, you drive by McDonald's, like, Mom, I'm gonna go to McDonald's. It's like, well, do you have McDonald's money? And it's like, well, no, I don't. And now it's like looking forward to, okay, I'm actually doing ads for McDonald's. Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, you would think a company as big as McDonald's would be super strict. They're actually super open to like whatever content I want to do. And like my McDonald's ads have done so well. Like I had one get like 2,000 or 3,000 likes, and I was even surprised. I'm like, this is an ad. People have to see that. But it was like engaging content that looked native to the page. So even when it comes to like, you know, branded
McDonald's
partnerships,
is so good at marketing. You know, like
they're
definitely smart enough to realize like same thing that you're thinking and that you're saying. It's like they need to be engaged with what you're doing.
Right. They don't want you to like wear like a Ronald McDonald hat and be like, you should eat our cheeseburger. It's like they know that people don't want to see that. Another thing too with their like food, it's the same everywhere you go, right? So I think for them it's just like, well, how do we communicate something where we're like getting, you know, the voice of that person into, you know, the conversation? And I think that's the biggest thing with marketing. And it's like through this whole like journey of Josh Eats, it's like I've learned so much about myself, obviously, but I've learned so much even about like marketing and social media and things like that. And it's like I've kind of like learned the hard way because I started so early. So it's like I learned from a lot of flops, like that Dunkin' post that did terrible, or like, you know, the Bud Light post that did terrible. It's like, okay, you know, now I know, number one, what my followers want to see, but then also just like what's engaging for people, just generally speaking. And I think that that's just such an important thing, even when we talk about like any type of marketing, or even like for restaurants that are thinking about social media, breweries thinking about social media. It's like, how do you create engaging content? How do you essentially tell a story to communicate with your audience? How do you even find your audience? I mean, that's like the thing too, right?
You know, you're trying to tell them so like the customers can actually connect. So the same thing that you're like all these other ones, like they aren't listening to it and it flops because people instantly perceive it as an ad.
Exactly.
To be connecting to them.
Exactly.
And something unique, because thing I see all the time is there are how many thousands of restaurants all over. If you're not doing something a little bit different than the one next door, like what sets you apart from everybody else?
It's so hard. And that's why I made that comment of like, it's not even just like knowing your audience. Sometimes you don't have one. Like maybe you're a new restaurant. Like how do you find your audience? How do you find your people, you know? And it's like, I think it all comes down to storytelling, like what story is being told. And it's something that I think you guys, do such a good job through this podcast. And even with what you guys do with Brew That is like getting the brewer stories out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just something we want to show that uniqueness from each place, because from an outside view of not being in the craft beer industry, I was just so fascinated by how unique each place was. And it just, I've mentioned this before, but it's something that was never captured on social media to the extent that I really think it could be. And then with that, it's how do you do that in a fun way that brings everybody together and shows their authentic brand.
Right. And how do you make it engaging and like captivating? Mm-hmm. And I think this kind of like ties us back to what we started with, like generation, millennials, Gen Z, like how do we get everyone engaged to these topics, right? You know, one thing that I think about, you know, kind of with this thing, and something that you guys have even said here on the podcast, you know, when it comes to like Gen Z and millennials, I know for me and my friends, like we love to support places that are like hyper local or that 100%. Have like a really cool story, right? And it's like, I think if we can, like as an industry, especially here in Philly, really showcase that, that's really what's going to make a difference when it comes to engagement from like younger generations. Like, you know, you put out a video about like, hey, you know, I'm from the neighborhood, or hey, you know, I'm part of the neighborhood, I'm part of the community, and I want to do something different. It's so much more engaging than just like, hey, here's a can, you know, beer. Unless it's the art's from a local artist, and people love that. But if it's just like a can, it's like you got to like find a way to like tell your story in a way that's engaging and like connects people with the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Philly specifically. I think Philly is all about like the culture of the food scene here, the culture of everything here. Is
for sure.
Blue collar, local, your neighborhood bar, the dive bar. It's like everything is about local and your like your neighborhood spots.
Right.
So like showcasing that anywhere is important, but I think in Philly is like even that much more important.
And it gets people so engaged. And it's funny, like when I think about what I do, right? You know, people ask me like, oh, you know, for the videos that I do, right? Like what are like the most engaged videos that I do? And it's whenever I'm doing like a very hyper local restaurant, like a family owned restaurant, something where it's like the restaurant has a compelling story. So it's like, you know, there are restaurants out there that's like, hey, you know, I decided to open in kind of like a more up and coming neighborhood. And I'm like one of the first here. And, you know, this is my story. This is my family business. And those are the posts that get the most engagement. And, you know, when I look at my own like analytics and insights, like the people that are engaging is people in that like 18 to 25, like Gen Z, they're just like so hyped, but it's like, man, like this place is local. These people have a really good story. And then they share it with their friends, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think when it comes to storytelling, like that's so important, especially here in Philly, because people want to see like their neighbors succeed. Like people want to see like, you know, like it's like kind of like David and Goliath. Like people want to see like the little guys succeed. And with Philadelphia specifically being such like a blue collar city where people see themselves in these restaurant owners, they want to see those places succeed. They want to support those places. So it's important to me, especially now that I have like gotten this platform, because it's one of those things where I didn't intentionally decide, you know, 13 years ago to become an influencer, but here we are, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, I feel like because I have this platform now, I want to do what I can in my power to help spotlight these places. Whether it is like a local brewery or local restaurant, like kind of showcase these like smaller stories and smaller places to give them that amplification.
And I think like they actually can do that now. You know, 15 years ago, social media wasn't a thing. So like getting print ads out there on newspapers or on TV like might not have been possible for like a small place, but a small business or brewery or restaurant is able to reach out to an influencer. And it's a lot easier. Like you can like directly talk to people through video or audio, through podcast, anything, and tell exactly what your story is.
That is such a good point. Like honestly,
like this wasn't even possible, you know?
Yeah, you're right. It's like in a way, social media made a level playing field, right? Because like you think 20 years ago, like especially like when we were all kids, right? You know, you're little kid, Saturday morning, you're watching like cartoons or something like that. You see ads for like Happy Meals or Wendy's or this or that, and the only thing that you're really fed is the big brands because they have like those massive marketing
like Bud
budgets.
Light reached out to you,
right?
Like 20 years ago, their marketing team, they're paying advertising agencies like $20 million for one ad. Do you think, you know, little mom and pop shop down the street can pay somebody $20 million for a TV ad? That's not possible. But they're reaching out to you the same way that local breweries are now reaching out to you, and you guys are both kind of using the same exact platform.
That's so cool. I never thought of it that way. I'm like, you're like kind of like making me think of this in a really different way, which is cool because you're right. Like now the playing field's level. So like you could be a mom and pop shop that opened yesterday, right? No marketing budget. You know, you just got your, you know, business together. You just opened and you could have someone like myself come through, and then you're amplified out to like 100,000 people. And it's like, back in the day, that wasn't even possible.
And the story that you're telling to like this mom and pop shop is like even more compelling because like you're showing what it truly is. So these small places almost have like a leg up on kind of the larger brands, because the larger brands almost have to spin themselves in some sort of way of like either like angle themselves on like you want this product for this specific reason, or trying to act smaller and trying to like act like more creative or like more nimble like the smaller guys. So the smaller people kind of, that's truly who they are.
I have a beer-related question for you on this topic. So it's on this topic because one thing I feel like we're seeing industry-wide is you have these massive breweries buying all these smaller breweries. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
This isn't just now. It's like the last, probably 30 years, like every 5 years, it just like expands and contracts. It's just like a lot of smaller brands open up, and then, either the economy gets bad, so it's like people that are kind of overextended need to like consolidate, or like 2015 when all the craft breweries started to get bought out. It was like the larger brands thought that they could steal market share from the craft brands by just buying them.
Right.
So it's like it is happening now. People are buying each other, but it's just like the ebbs and flows of the industry.
For sure. Because I feel like that's the same point you're making. It's like these bigger brands, whether it's food or beverage, that want to make themselves look smaller. They're like,
and it totally flopped. In 2015, the larger brands, for some people, it helped because they were able to kind of like consolidate their supply chain and get deals on like buying like raw materials. So like it did help kind of the regional breweries that came together. But the larger brands like Anheuser-Busch that went out and just bought breweries, I think they bought Ballast Point for $1.2 billion.
Wow!
And then they sold it for like $30 million 3 years later, something like that. It wasn't just Ballast Point. There was lots of other breweries like that across the country where they were selling like 30, 40, 50 times their value, and it's just like but the instant they got sold, the customer like realized that they were now Anheuser-Busch, and like Anheuser-Busch like didn't see that like they couldn't then keep doing that. Like people truly were buying the craft brands because they were small local brands. It wasn't just because of the flavor of the craft beer. Yeah. So
I feel like also, because I talk to my friends about this stuff, I feel like millennials and Gen Z, we just have such a aversion to like that type of thing where it's like, oh man, this is like Anheuser-Busch now. Like people are especially like super into craft beer, right?
The world is so connected now with like, social media that like you can see through all this stuff. It's not like you're just getting fed stuff on TV. It's like everyone knows everything that's happening. The information is there. So like it's basically everything is transparent. So you can't hide something or like pretend something isn't real. Like the truth is going to get out eventually, and it's just.
And it gets out like so fast now because
it does.
Like the moment it happens, people are like, oh, did you know like XYZ brand's like not local anymore? And when we think about the numbers, because one thing you guys talk about in the podcast, like all these news articles are out there about like Gen Z's like buying less craft beer, like this or that, and it's just like I wonder if some of it's that type of stuff where it's like you have things that are like craft beer but they're not local.
Yeah, where's the article saying that like 60% of the breweries out there are still doing the majority of their media on Facebook? Like,
well, there's that part.
It's like you guys aren't seeing connection here. Like no wonder people that are only on TikTok are not buying your beer that's only on Facebook. It's like you guys just aren't talking to the right people.
Right. So you're not getting the message out. Exactly. That's so true too. Because it's like it's a combination where you have these massive brands buying the smaller brands and trying to like make it cool, and it's like we see through that. Like we're not doing that. Then you have these smaller brands that are out here doing the right thing, doing good work, but then we're not getting the information because we don't see it. Like they're not speaking to us because they're not on the platform at all.
There's a middle ground that I think everyone, I think people are starting to realize it now. But with people like Brewdat, like they're helping these smaller places kind of like get back to that center point.
Yeah.
It's about being an educator, and I'm sure and I'm curious to hear like how you dealt with a lot of that during the beginning of your Josh Eats Philly as well.
I think, you guys have probably very similar story because restaurants kind of adapted or adopted like the influencer stuff, I think, well before breweries did. So it's almost like you're like 5 to 10 years before them trying to like teach these brands like, this matters. You need to get in front of these people because this is your target audience.
Absolutely. I agree. And it's like, I would say we're probably like 3 to 5 years ahead in that sense because even when we talk about like smaller breweries, even with the things I've done, have like rarely worked with breweries. And I think a lot of it is just because it's a lack of understanding of how do we work with this, or how do we take advantage of this tool. Because that's what social media is. It's a tool. It's a great marketing tool, right? And I think there's just so much misunderstanding when it comes to social media. Like, how do we use this to essentially get people in the door? Something that's been hard just on the restaurant side is like ROI, like the return on investment, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to bring you in, you're going to do X, Y, Z, and, afterward, what's going to happen? But, at the end of the day, it's not even all about like, okay, Josh comes in, then the next day, like, we're going to sell 1,000, whatever. I don't know, like, all of a sudden business is going to go up 1,000% or something crazy. And it's not that it doesn't happen. It can happen, but it's like, it's not necessarily about that. It's about getting the message out to people, because some people are going to like the picture, save the picture, share it with their friend. And then it's going to be on their list of, okay, we're going to go there in like 3 to 6 months. Like, it's not always like an instant thing. And communicating that to businesses, like, it's not going to always be like, an instant effect of like, okay, we got social media here, so tomorrow, that's our day. It's like, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. There's ebbs and flows.
They see that you're involved, and subconsciously they're realizing that like this business understands the target customer that they're going after is my same age. So I want to go there because probably other people my age are going there.
People want to see themselves,
somebody, not being involved with something like that, I'm like, they clearly don't understand it. So if I go there, it's probably going to be more the same thing where they just don't understand. They're not connected. It's not my type of people that are going to this place.
And I think something I see in marketing, and Cole is always preaching this, is marketing has touch points. And it's something that local businesses really have never had the opportunity to. But with social media, you have those marketing touch points, because then you could see this business on JoshEatsPhilly, and then you happen to walk by this business. You're like, I just saw this place.
I just remember, right.
And it's, oh, I saw this, I'm going to go there. So it's hard, in certain cases, it is hard to show ROI, but if you get the message out there enough, and the way that I put it out in breweries is these touch points of seeing your product on BrewDad, and then, I don't know, going to a beer store and seeing the product on the shelf. It's that same exact concept.
It's also there forever. I mean, like, back in the day, you put out like a print ad in a newspaper. That print ad is gone in one day. As much as like social media seems like it's there and gone in a flash because it's out of your feed, you can go back and look at your post from 5 years ago, and it's still there. And this business that you post about can keep resharing that forever and ever, and it's always going to be there. Where they can't do that with a TV ad or a post or something like that. It's like, it's very instantaneous, but it's also permanent.
I agree, like 1,000,000%. And I think another thing too, kind of on the topic, is one thing that we're also educating is sometimes it's about the cool factor, which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. Like, it's like, okay, have you ever gone into a restaurant? Because this actually happened to me this week. I'm not going to name the place. I walked into a restaurant, literally everyone in there was like 60 to 70 to 80 years old. Like, I was more than half the age of everyone in there. And, I looked at it, I was like, oh, the food's probably good, but do I even want to be here? I don't know, right? Like, I don't know. And, when you go into places like that, like, maybe you'll like get a drink, maybe you'll get a beer, but you're probably not going to hang out. You're probably not going to even tell your friends about the place, right? You're going to be like, oh, it was kind of weird. Versus you go into a place and you see a lot of people that look like they could be your peers in there. It changes your perception of a place and your perspective. And then you're going to be like, okay, when my friends are in town, we're going to go to this place. Or my friends in Philly that may not have been here, we're going to go to this place. Like, you have to see yourself in these places. So even if it's just in the context of social media, they see you going to a brewery and you featuring it on BrewDad, they're like, oh man, you guys are pretty cool. I like their podcast. I'm going to go to that brewery. Or they see Josh going to a place. It's like, oh yeah, Josh is like kind of cool, I guess, like maybe. I should go to that place because Josh was just there, And it's like, I think it does have an impact, but it's not always, again, immediate. So it's like, sometimes, you might have someone go in, they're like, oh, this is kind of cool, and they'll tell other friends about it. Like, it was so funny. Last week, I was walking to Rittenhouse Square, and like a couple friends came up. We ran into each other, randomly, whatever. And they're like, oh man, have you been to this bar in Fishtown? And I was like, oh yeah, what is it? Next to Ken, it's so cool, it's so fun. And the reason that they love this bar was like, they said the music was really good. And everyone there seemed like super cool, super chill, like whatever. But it's like things like that, the word of mouth is so real, where it's like, okay, you go to a place, you have really positive experience, you see people that look like you there, you have, good music, good vibes, then you start talking about it. And then that could go from like essentially a snowball effect of like, maybe you have one person go, and that one person tells 3 people, that 3 people tell 10 people, and like so on and so forth. So that's the way I try to position it, where it's like, I get like, okay, maybe tomorrow things aren't going to blow up, but if we can start getting the word out about what you're doing, it's going to have long-term ripple effects.
You also, you are cool. Like I talk about the entity,
being a little humble.
The entity of Josh Eats Philly, like I'm talking about, is like you are on the news. Like you can present yourself very well. Like you're very charismatic. So like when people see you next to a brand, like part of it is the images you're putting on the internet, but also it's like it's Josh Eats Philly putting yourself next to these brands. So like people see that on the internet, and they kind of want you to be a part of it. And
it's still crazy to me. That's what's like, yeah, sure.
It's cool. Yeah, it's like awkward to like kind of say that like
oh sure
to a person, but it's like when people try to do social media by themselves, sometimes they can't do that. It comes out. We were talking about this earlier. Like it looks like a high school. Video project.
High school production.
Yeah, it looks terrible. Yeah. So like maybe they understand that like they need to get involved with social media, but like people like you and Brewdad can step in and like listen, like we can take this over from like so you guys don't have to like put out this crappy product. Like we can make your product look cool. We can present it like next to cool looking people, and we can show people on the internet that this is a cool, fun place to be, so that when they show up, they're expecting the people that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I love that you guys are doing that too. And I feel like even with the podcast, because I said I listen to every episode. I am a super fan of this podcast. Definitely recommend Brewdad.
Clip it.
Yeah, there it is. But no, seriously, like I love what you guys are doing because you're interviewing people that have been in the industry for decades, right? And you're getting them even onto this platform of podcasting, which is another like huge platform for people. I myself, huge fan of podcasts. Like I listen to podcasts all the time. One thing people don't realize, like for me to edit a video takes like, 2 to 4 hours, some like 3 to 4 hours, whatever, to edit a video. I'll like just listen to podcasts the entire time I'm editing. And I think that's just something that's so common for millennials and Gen Z, where it's like, whether if we're cleaning our house, if we're going on a run, if we're exercising, like, we're like listening to podcasts, we're getting educated, but we're also kind of like getting entertainment, from these types of things. And I think even this platform is so important when it comes to like sharing stories. And you get more of a story on a podcast than you get from like a 10-second like Instagram reel on TikTok.
Download the Let's Rally app to find fun, random things to do in and around Philly. Let's Rally plans your day or night for you. Just tell the app how many people you have at your party and how far you're willing to go. You can also add filters like bars, experiences, and food, and the app will create a plan for you instantly. Unthink today and download Let's Rally.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
For sure.
So, the Lit Brothers.
Go for it.
Are you guys starting a podcast?
So, great question. We're doing a podcast episode that will be airing soon. We're going to record on February 7th. I think it's going to air probably like the following week. But Ernest has a podcast. He's had it for years.
Yeah.
And he's a huge podcaster. I myself have thought about starting a podcast because everyone says I should, and I'm always like, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about for 45 minutes weekly. Like, what? But Ernest is really good at it, so we're going to do an episode together. So, it'll be kind of like this, like interview style. We'll kind of like chat or whatever, which will be fun. But I don't know if I have the enough to talk about, because one person that said I should start a podcast was like, oh, just talk about all the restaurants you've been to. I'm like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I totally could. But I'm like, do I talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, or just the good? Like, how does that work? Because I also don't want like the podcast to just be like.
I mean, it's also just your personality. Like, you talk about the cool guys. Like you four walk into a bar. Like
for sure.
Looked up you guys a little bit. It's just like how to start a little like happy hour group. Boys group. It was just like you guys four walk in. It clearly looks like a cool thing. So like get you guys on a podcast together. It's like that means you guys are talking about the local stuff. That's cool. It's like. I think that,
there's huge value to it. So we're going to be at the Hard Rock Cafe doing like a podcast recording. But it's kind of the whole point you made. Like for the Hard Rock, this is huge for them. Yeah. They're like, we have this cool group of guys that are doing a live recording of a podcast. And I'm like, I feel like I'm just kind of there for it. I'm like, I'm honestly hyped to be with them. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm the super fan at that point. But, for me, it's just still so funny because obviously I do Josh Eats Philly. I do all the food stuff. So, people, I guess, see me as a respected voice in the food scene. And I'll take it, whatever. I eat at a lot of restaurants. But I just feel like I love food so much. It's hard for me to see anything like that. Like, I think some people are like, oh, are you like a food critic? And I'm like, I wouldn't call myself a critic.
Objectively, you're just like
exactly.
everything up.
Yeah, and I think for me too, it's kind of twofold. Where number one, like the places I'm working with are all mostly so small, like other than McDonald's. But like the small businesses I'm working with are so small, it's like I would never want to say anything negative anyway. And I want to just showcase the good that they're doing. So let's say there's like one dish that comes out and it's like a little off. I would rather talk to the owner and say, hey, let's talk for a second. This dish, could use some improvement, whatever. Then, go on to Yelp, Google, or Instagram and say, everything was good except for this one thing. Like, I'd rather, have a conversation because everyone wants to improve. Like, nobody wants to, put out crappy products or whatever. So that's how I've always seen what I do. So that's why when people are like, oh, are you, a food critic? You're like, you're like the food guy. And I'm like, I'll take food guy, but I wouldn't call myself a critic because even though even if I were to taste something I don't like, especially with the smaller places, I'd rather give them encouragement, feedback, and point them in the right direction and be like, okay, this is really bad.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to Craig LeBan or any of the other food influencers?
No, it's funny. I have not. So we follow each other on Instagram. Yeah. Great guy. But no, we've never actually met in person or done anything because he is very incognito when he goes to restaurants. I mean, everyone knows
no information on the internet.
Yeah, right. But it's so funny.
Doesn't even have a photo there.
No, it's everyone knows who he is at this point. But he goes into restaurants incognito. I feel like even though we follow each other on Instagram, I think even if he were to see me, I don't know if it would be a open invitation oh, hi, my name is, just because I think he wants to keep some anonymity out there, right? I respect it. I put my face out there, and it's once you take the genie out of the box, you can't put it back in.
Exactly.
So I'm like, well, I'm out here now. Yeah. So I'm on TV, I suppose. So I guess I can't go back to being an obvious.
But even his Instagram, it's not just being a critic. I think a lot of stuff that he does, he kind of showcases people kind of the same way that you're doing as well.
He does, yeah.
And he was obviously doing food critic stuff long before you started
I think
this.
probably before we were born.
Yeah, but you probably definitely embraced, not him specifically, but you probably definitely embraced, the whole showcasing stuff
the style,
on social media and that style probably well before a lot of these people. And they kind of saw it, recognized that this is truly, this matters.
And I think because of the way I do it, it's been such a benefit to small businesses. And I think so many of them want that now because they're like, they're
critics because they love the industry. They're not critics because they hate it and they want to see everyone thrive as well.
Right. But I feel like this actually ties into what you were saying too about education, right? Or even where the brewery scene is versus the restaurant scene. I think because restaurants have seen what I do, they want more of that, And I think for breweries, as they see what you're doing, they're going to be like, I want more of that, or I want that at my brewery, right? So it's for the restaurants that I've been to, they have succeeded. So, I made the talk of ROI. That was definitely harder earlier on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking 2019 or even 2020 during the pandemic when restaurants were, it was really hard. And ROI was even more important. But, as my platform has grown, I don't want to say it's a guaranteed thing because I never make guarantees, but so many places I go to, literally they do get immediate results. So one restaurant I went to a couple weeks ago, I went, posted, and then they had lines out the door, literally right afterward. And I'm like, that's insane. To me, it's still crazy that even happens. But she sent me a picture of literally lines out the door, and her restaurant had been open for 6+ months. Wow. And the first 6 months was hard. It wasn't it was a new restaurant that was super busy. It was a restaurant that was open for 6 months and no one really knew about it. Yeah. And I came, did a little post or whatever, and then boom, lines out the door. And I've heard the story over and over, especially more recently, as my following has grown. So there definitely are benefits, and as other restaurants have seen it, they're oh crap, I want that. I want lines out the door. I want to sell out by noon or whatever.
It's a word of mouth within the restaurant industry.
Exactly.
And they see what the impact is. It takes time, but you've been around for quite a while now.
Yeah, I'm old now. It's I just had a birthday, but I'm not going to reveal how old I am.
We were talking about this before. We're about the same age, and it's we're older than Evan.
Yeah.
But we're a lot younger than the brewery owners
or the restaurant owners, right?
So and it's getting that connection between you know, the people that are partying every single night and the people in the businesses. Like,
and then sometimes we are the people partying every night.
Exactly. I feel like
I know we gotta like do a little bit.
The nice mix. It's a nice
like,
mix.
We're in between. Like, we belong in both groups. Where like it's hard for people from either group to kind of see the other person. Like the people that own these places never grew up with social media.
Exactly.
The people that are spending all this money and partying every night.
They
don't know
grew
anything
up
besides
with it.
social media.
Yeah, it's like millennials. We are that bridge generation, right? Where it's like we are about our business. We can do what we have to do, but then we can party like crazy.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And it's so cool because I feel like we can talk to like Gen Z, like someone that's in like 18 to 25. Like I feel like my content is so appealing to them. You know, my TikTok is so appealing to them. But then someone that's like older, they might not understand it, but they see the numbers, they see the money, they understand the business aspect of it. So like, okay, I kind of get it. So it's like, I feel like millennials are such a bridge in that way. And it's so funny. I went to this one restaurant and this like older lady came up to me because I think, you know, she went through like my videos or whatever. But she's like, oh, it was on your Facebook. I'm like, oh, I forgot I had a Facebook. Like, whatever. Because, like, JoshEatsPhilly Facebook just reposts all the things automatically. I forgot it existed. And I was like, oh, cool. Facebook. Love that. She's like, I like your little commercials you do. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, those little trailers or whatever you call them. I'm like, trailers. Yeah, gotcha. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I do. Commercials and trailers for restaurants. She's like, yeah. So, you know, when she said it, it was funny. But then I'm like, it's actually kind of cool though. Like it is like a little 10-second ad I'm doing for these restaurants, essentially for free for the most part. So it's like, you know, I'm creating these like really high quality commercials where like, you know, 30 years ago, to your point, that would have been like a $20 million marketing agency creating a commercial.
And it's a
versus
whole process
now it's all on their
set it
iPhone.
up. Now they're literally DMing you. You show up, and it's just like it's a lot easier to deal with you, where you're just like all in one, editing, filming, you are the content. And then
leveling the playing field though,
it's like not having to like figure out how to deal with the ad agency and then getting it on a TV show. It's like
right. And it's so funny because it's like, again, I never thought of this until we kind of put this all together on the podcast. Like, you know, we're leveling the playing field with what we're doing. Where it's like, you know, again, it would have cost them millions to do this 30 years ago. Now it's like you bring in someone like me, I create an entire essentially commercial, which again, I would have never thought of it, but like trailers for restaurants. Like it's like a movie trailer. Like, that would cost millions. I was like, boom, you could have someone do it on their phone.
And for me, like originally when me and Cole started doing this, going to breweries, it felt very weird to us that we want to be taken seriously, but then we're also doing work on our phones. And like, how is that looked at by the owners or whoever's around you? I'm sure you've gotten so many looks over the years. I can't even imagine.
This could be a whole episode. Seriously. Yeah, let me start with that. So 5 years ago was definitely when it was really bad. You know, I go in there, my phone, like, hey, you know, whatever. They're like, what are you even doing? I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm just taking photos or whatever, videos. And then they would see the end result. They'd see the photo post. They're like, oh, actually, that's really cool. I'm like, yeah. But there was like, you know, I decided to buy a camera 5 years ago, back when Instagram was just photos, because I got tired of like not being like taken seriously. So I started bringing a camera, you know, taking photos, like whatever. And it was cool. All of a sudden, like 2019 comes around and TikTok starts. And then my camera is literally worthless because everything became video. Because like TikTok was 2019, Reels was 2020. Yeah. And I'm like, well, there's really no point. So I'm like back to using my phone. And I've even still, you know, to this day, even with restaurant, you know, owners kind of know and who I am and what I do. Like, look, how do you do all that with your phone? I'm like, well, it is what it is. And honestly, even when I've had...
Do you have the newest iPhone?
What? No, I do not.
What is it? 14?
This is the 14 Pro. I actually have some friends that upgraded to the 15 Pro. They said the camera is not as good. So I'm
really?
Like, yeah, like it's software. That's the thing with like these Apple launches. It's always software where it's like, sometimes I like to wait for the software glitches to get fixed. I do kind of want to get the new one, but like,
the new one's very nice. I just upgraded recently from the 10 to the 14.
Well,
and it was night and day. It was insane. It was
that's like, a big difference.
Well, I got a lot better at taking pictures very quickly.
Yeah, it's like now anybody can do it. And it's crazy because like 5 years ago, you're right. I think we're on the iPhone 10. The photos were fine. So it was kind of nice. I had my camera, and then people were like, oh, you're a professional. I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it was like a camera. I got like a certified used camera from Canon. And it was a good camera or whatever, but like I wanted to kind of dip my toe into it. So I'm like, I'll just get like a certified whatever, you know, went to places with the camera. But now it's like I never take it out of the house just because like everything's video. And even when I work with like like major brands or like small restaurants, everybody wants video. So because of that, like I can take video with my camera, but the like image stabilization technology on like a DSLR camera or even a mirrorless camera is not as good as this, unless you have like a $3,000 Sony A7. But my camera is not a $3,000 Sony A7, so I'm like, well, I can take video with it, but it's just not even worth my time. So I've been back on the phone, it's just so funny.
Your style at this point, so like
exactly
again, back to like the you are Josh Eats Philly,
right?
Like you have this very similar style on everything. Like everything's
it's like very
different.
Punchy, very bright, very colorful.
How was changing from that photo time to then going to the videos?
So hard. I don't know if because I know you did your research. I don't know if you went to my early TikToks from 2019.
Did not scroll.
No, you don't want to do that. It's so funny. So I got onto TikTok, I feel like a year before everyone else, because I feel like everyone got on it in the pandemic, like March 2020. I was on it in 2019, and I had no clue what I was doing. I was just like, videos, music, fine. I just threw some crap together, threw it out there. My like early TikTok videos are way cringier than my early Instagram photos. Because my early Instagram photos was at least like a vibe. Maybe not the best vibe, but a vibe. My TikTok videos just like, something like panning around with some crappy music. Or I would like try to jump on a trend. I don't know. And this is again early on. Like I didn't even know what trends were. But I'd be like, oh, this sound is like trending. I'm gonna just put this sound on like me pouring a drink, because that makes sense. And it'd be like completely unrelated.
Yeah, the trend chasing. I mean, we talk about trend chasing all the time. Like, no, stick to your brand.
Stick to your brand. Exactly. And it's like if you're gonna do a trend, at least do it right. I was not. It was just bad. So I just remember like going back to like my old TikToks. They're all still out there.
You mean dances?
No, that's one thing I said to myself day one, I'm not doing dancing. But I would use like dance trend audio on my content because that made sense. But I was close to it because I was like, man, I need to go viral. Maybe I should just like suck it up, do a dance, and see what happens.
Eat a cheeseburger afterwards.
I know, right? I didn't do that though. But no, my early videos were terrible. So the transition from photo video was hard. So I was in this weird point in 2019 where on Instagram, I was still just taking photos because Reels didn't exist yet then, because they came out in 2020. And on TikTok, I'm just like throwing some random crappy videos out there. So it's like I didn't fully transition into like now like almost full video content until 2020, because I'm like, well, Instagram has Reels, and I know when it comes to any type of social media, you want to be an early adopter. So I'm like, okay, let me just start doing this whole Reels thing. My early Reels were also terrible, but I kind of started to learn. I was like, I need to like showcase more of the restaurant. I need to like, slow it down, because my early videos, and this was just kind of the TikTok thing, was just so much more chaotic, where just like boom, 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 just like sensory overload. Yeah. And I thought that's what you're supposed to do. That's why I saw everyone else like on TikTok doing. But now it's like a lot more to the point I was making, like a trailer or like a commercial. It's like everything comes full circle, right? Where I'm like, I feel like when you see some of my videos, it could be like an ad for a movie, not a real movie, obviously, but it's just like you see the pours, you see the dip shots, you kind of see like all this different edits and cuts. Or like if you're like watching like the Food Network and it's like the way that they showcase food, I kind of started doing that.
There's a science behind it. Like
There's a science behind
it. You're not just randomly going there and taking videos. Like you have a
plan.
I used
like, to.
Yeah, exactly. But you
same.
Now this dish is sitting in front of you, French onion soup or whatever. Like how are you going
like
to present
a cheese
this?
bowl, right?
Exactly. You have
and
a plan.
It's crazy. Yeah, well, I have a plan now. It's so crazy because before I would aimlessly go, and this is even, I'd say even 2020, 2021, like aimlessly show up at a restaurant like, crap, I have to like do a video, like, do it chaotically, take videos and just like hope for the best, jam it together, post it out there and hope it does something. But now I do have a method to it where it's like, okay, to your point with French onion soup, it's like, okay, how can I make this French onion soup as sexy as possible? And it's funny because I used to have that mindset with photos. I still do. Where I would, try to make this photo like sexy or sexual or just like something that almost doesn't even look like food. It just is really like appetizing. So now I'm like, why? I should take that mindset and like put it to video too, right? So, you do like the slow-mo pulls, you do this, you do that, you see like the drip from the tacos. Like actually I did a video of a taqueria that just opened called Hilo Taco. Really good, recommend, definitely go. And I did the video with like a lot of different effects. You'd see it through the course of the video. So you'll see like these tacos, but they're like so juicy, like dripping with like, all the goodness. And like the video starts with, like this taco that's dripping, and then I do like dip shots and cheese pulls with nachos, and it's like you have all these visual elements in the video of all the different courses of food that they have. Or like I think there was like churros that like dipped them in like the like chocolate or whatever. And like this video is like so sensual, it's weird. Where I'm like, I know it's tacos and nachos,
Did you have to,
but
like,
it's like, oh,
did
this
you
is
lean into it? And she was like, Usher song, or did you like?
I should have, right? Like, some old school Usher, right? I another place I did something like that for. This was like a year ago. There was this new cocktail lounge that opened, and they had like cocktails, like the smoking cocktails and stuff like that. And I posted this video, and someone comments like, why is this video so sensual? Why is this video so sexy? I don't like it. And I'm like, well, you commented, and that was the goal. So, yeah. But it's like kind of getting that element onto videos and kind of like showcasing food in that type of way. Because, I mean, it just makes it that much more appetizing. It makes it that much more like, well, it makes the video more engaging, but it makes you like want to go to that place.
I mean, the hottest food trend right now for Instagram people is home chefs just trying to like,
blur the lines.
Sex.
Yeah,
it's like shirt off. Yeah, like making
muscle.
Food. Like what? You're just making pasta with your shirt off. Like,
right. Or they like take a cucumber and eggplant.
Yeah,
like, sir. Yeah, I know what you're doing with that. I don't know if I love it, but I watched the whole
video.
They're
taking
twice.
that to the extreme. But like you're like kind of leaning into that a little bit. Like I mean, it's super popular because it worked for them.
Yeah,
like,
and it does. And it's like, again, I always try to do something that I feel like no one else in the city is doing. So like, no one else in Philly is doing videos like that. Watch me say that, then everyone will start doing that.
Well, they will. They're influencers.
That's where it goes.
The influencers.
Yeah.
You know, but it's one of those things where it's like no one else is doing that, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to kind of like take it to the next level where you're showcasing a restaurant in such a way where people want to go, because the restaurant itself seems cool and the food looks like so appetizing. You like have to have it.
Yeah, I getting back to some of the niche and that style. I have a buddy, Chef Tyler, who does grilled cheese videos, and his whole
cheese pull,
and that's like the cheese pull is everything, and it's kind of crazy because
it is. Yeah,
he is able to really get out there. He has like 500,000 followers on every platform, and I think he just hit 1 million on YouTube.
Wow,
and it's all grilled cheese style videos,
right?
But it's the money shot. Like it is certainly a money shot. It's crazy.
I will say too, like one thing Richie said is like find your niche, right? Boom. Like grilled cheese. And I think having a tight niche is so good. I remember when I like branded my account as JoshEatsPhilly, so I did it and I was like, this is cool, whatever. But then I was like, shoot, like what if I don't stay in Philly? Like, well, is this going to be a bad thing down the road?
I was going to ask that. Like, do you only do Philly stuff? Do you ever do like Atlantic City? Or
I do. It's funny. I'm going to Atlantic City tomorrow, actually, on Friday. So I do a lot down there, but it's just so funny because as I started growing, that's why I was getting more and more nervous. I'm like, I can't like change the name or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like reserved Josh Eats NYC because there was a time in my life where I was like, well, I might move to New York. I might not. I don't know. Maybe it's just reserved just in case. But I'm definitely settled in Philly now. I'm never gonna leave. But it was just like one of those things I thought about, and I listened to your episode about Brew 15, which is the potential name for this podcast. And I remember what you guys had said of like, you don't want to, pigeonhole yourself into one place.
Yeah.
So I was going so back and forth, at least for me on it. But now, like, as I've like kind of gotten more established, I think to Richie's point, like finding that dedicated niche, and Philly is my niche. Philly in the suburbs, we'll call it.
I mean, it's an
works.
enormous city.
Yeah.
Like, as much as like you can grow and be like a national brand. I mean, I think you should have your own TV show. You have that personality.
Do not have that personality.
But
that's debatable.
It's like
exactly, it's debatable.
Yeah, as big as you are in Philly, there's still so much. I mean, it's an enormous city. There's still so much to do.
I think for me, like, it's Philadelphia and the Jersey Shore primarily.
Which is Philly Junior.
Philly Junior, especially if you're in like Wildwood. It's like South Philly. It's great,
Yeah.
And then I do as far west. I've been out to Lancaster, done a few things out there. The Lancaster people are awesome, and all the food there is so good. Honestly.
I mean, everything is like
it's literally farm fresh.
Yeah,
like literally every restaurant there is farm to
everything's
table.
Organic. It's like great.
They were doing farm to table before it was cool, So I do like going out there, but. Recently, I had the opportunity to go to Aruba, which was crazy.
Yeah, right. That was sick.
It's absolutely sick.
Josh eats Aruba?
Right. So I actually hashtagged it because I was like, why not? Here. But that's a really fun story. So I randomly get an email from this gentleman that said, hey, I work for the Aruba Tourism Bureau. I'm like, this has got to be spam. No way this is real. So he's like, let's jump on like a Zoom call. I'm like, okay, it was a Zoom call. Because, you know, like, have you guys ever watched the TV show Catfish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The funny thing with that show, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but like all those people would never get on camera because they were obviously all fake. They would never do phone calls. They would never do like, you know, camera calls. So I'm like, oh, the fact that this guy's asking for a Zoom call, you know, this little Visitor Aruba thing, maybe it's real. Who knows? So I email him back. I'm like, yeah, let's do like a Zoom call, like whatever. Let's figure this out. So I do a Zoom call with this guy, and it's like a real person. I'm like, oh, wow, this might be legit. So I look the guy up on LinkedIn, and then I see him like, okay, wait, no, he actually does work at this place. He is a real person. And his picture matched up. Which, again, I guess it could have been a fake LinkedIn profile. I didn't think of that at the time, but that's neither here nor there.
Sometimes you just gotta take a leap of faith.
Right. So, like, we're setting this whole trip up, and this goes on for months. Like, and the fact that it was actually going for so long was another one reason that I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna happen, but we'll see. So they're like, okay, we just booked your flights. So I'm like, okay. And I look to see if these flights actually booked. This is a real plane. I don't know at this point. And it was a real plane. I'm like, this might happen.
That's a good
I don't know
sign.
yet. We'll see. You know, I get to the airport and like the ticket works. I'm like, okay, this might be real. They like booked the hotel like in Aruba. So I, you know, get to the hotel and I'm like, do you know who I am? Like, is my name in the registration or whatever? And they're like, oh yeah, we're so excited for you to be here. I'm like, what? Like, it didn't hit me that it was real until probably day 3 of the trip. I was like, wait, this is actually real. I'm actually here in a hotel.
They had you just doing essentially your same content down there.
Yeah, so, and actually that's a good story too. So I'm like, how did you even find me? So what the gentleman I had talked to on the phone, you know, before even going down the trip was like, the reason we found you and the reason why we wanted you to go is you saw what you're doing for small businesses in Philly. And we didn't really see anything else like that, you know, as we've like been essentially looking all over the Northeast for people to go down to Aruba.
Yeah.
So they're like, you know, one thing that you have in like these, you know, Caribbean resorts is everyone just stays on the all-inclusive and never like leaves the all-inclusive, right? So they're like, you know, what we wanted to do is just have someone feature small businesses in Aruba and just showcase that like there's things to do outside the resorts. So like they're like literally scouring through, I'm assuming like hundreds of accounts at least, like throughout the, you know, country. Like they're not just looking at Philly. And like of all the hundreds of accounts, I guess mine got to the top of the stack somehow. And they're like, no, we like really like the type of videos you're doing because like you're doing hyper local, you know, super small business focus, and we want that type of video here. And I was like, that's a huge honor, like, right? Because like I'm like, these are like people from like, I'm sure like New York bloggers are looking at, of course, Philly bloggers and like other different regions. They're like, no, like that's the video style we want. So went down there and like I went all over the island, which was crazy. So, you know, I, you know, took taxis like an hour away from like the resort area to like the middle of nowhere and ate some of the best food I've ever had. Like, and it's so funny because I told people like, oh, I might be going to Aruba. They're like, oh, the food sucks. Good luck with that.
Yeah, when they're eating resort food.
Right,
you know?
exactly. Like literally everybody I talked to said that. So I was like, I was like, oh, I didn't know what to expect. But like, I didn't eat at a resort at all, like the whole time I was there. And they set up an itinerary. They're like, hey, you know, here's some businesses like all over the island that we would love you to feature. And I just went, did the whole thing, and it was crazy. And it was just like one of the biggest, I guess, accomplishments I've ever had from this page, where it's like, you know, international, right? So it's like Josh Eats Aruba, but it's like people that see like the work that I'm doing and the value that I'm bringing, and then they're like, you know, we want that where we're at. And that's why I made the comment earlier, because even for restaurants here in Philly, they're seeing what I'm doing, they're like, you want that. And it's like the biggest honor when a place says something like that, you know, no matter what the place is. It could be like mom and pop corner shop, you know, if you want that, that's such an honor that you want that. If it's Visit Aruba, that's a massive honor, but still, like, it's just so crazy that those opportunities can come up.
I mean, you're talking about like they had you go down there. So Bill Kowaleski owns Victory, and I've talked about this with him in the past.
Great guy.
He's part of the board of tourism for Chester County, somehow involved with the Chester County Tourism Association. And he, you know, it's important because bringing in tourists brings them business, you know, not just him, but the other businesses around there. And if you go, when you go up to New York City, they have ads for Visit Bucks County.
It's crazy.
It's every other ad is Visit Bucks County. Like, it
Bucks
feels
County
weird.
is killing it right now.
And
They're
it
doing
feels
such a
weird
good job.
for somebody from Philly to go up to New York and be like, Bucks County. Like, I don't live in Philly. Like,
Right.
I don't go to Bucks County.
Exactly. It's like, why would I go to the suburbs?
It's somebody. I grew up in Bucks County, and I live in New York now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like,
exactly.
That's
that must
the
be,
craziest
like,
thing.
so surreal though, like going into the subway and you're seeing Visit Bucktown. It's like, what's that?
It's like why? And like I do get it,
Because it
but I
makes
grew
difference.
up there too.
Yeah, well, Peddler's Village and New Hope. There's a lot of great stuff in Buckstown.
So
Absolutely.
the whole tourism is a huge business because when people travel someplace, they're not just living there. Like they're going there and they're going out every single night,
spending so much money.
Bill, Big Brain Energy, like he's just like tourism is super important, and the fact that it's not just.
Did you say Big Brain Energy?
Big Brain Energy.
I love that.
Bill is one of the smartest people I've ever met. But
I love that.
Everything he says is just it's like, oh well, you need to think bigger. Like this is more important. Like Aruba coming to you, wanting people from Philadelphia because you have such a connection with people from Philadelphia to then go down to Aruba. But it's like the opposite of that is true. It's like you are almost like tourism coming into Philadelphia because you're located here. It's not just people in Philadelphia that are looking at you because you have such a massive reach. Now, like you did win Food Influencer of the Year. That is on the internet.
Yeah.
Like people do look that stuff up. So tourists are looking at this and they're looking directly at your page. Where are they going? They don't know these mom and pop shops, but they do now because you're there.
And it's so crazy.
Like you're showcasing it.
And I just love everything you're saying, Richie, because I'm thinking, again, like, always bringing it full circle to imagine you're person from, I don't know, Cleveland, Ohio, coming to Philly 30 years ago. You're going to stay at, I don't know, the Holiday Inn and just eat at whatever restaurants are around there.
Fridays.
Exactly, right? You're not even thinking about it. But now, in the era of social media, and also in the era of Philadelphia, like, the food scene finally getting the recognition it deserves, it's like now you're going to go to like Josh Eats Philly and be like, okay, what's really good in Philly? Like I'm coming from Cleveland. I want to try something new when I come to Philly. What's good? And I get those DMs, right?
When I go to other towns, I'm pulling up Instagram, figuring out where to go. And then I go to the restaurant. And even at the restaurant itself, I'm pulling up their Instagram and I'm looking at their tag, not their pictures, the tagged posts about like what
you want to see what the food looks like.
Exactly.
And it's like, it's so funny because I had the opportunity last year to work with Visit Philly as well for the same type of thing because they're like, let's showcase like some really good spots in Philly. So like I created like an itinerary that like, okay, if you're in Philly, here's some great spots to go. So we went to like Reading Terminal Market, of course, right? You got to go there. And then I went to, I with Visit Philly went to John's Roast Pork. Have you guys been there?
Of course.
Of course, right.
Of course.
It's an institution, right. Honestly, one of my favorite cheesesteaks in the city, like seriously. And I love Angelo's as well. Like Angelo's is great. But John's Roast Pork is just so good. And honestly, it's a little bit easier to get in and out of the line than like Angelo's could be sometimes.
Angelo's is a monster at this point.
It is. Like, I mean, you're
it
going
is
to wait
the new
forever.
monster now.
Yeah, you're going to wait
It used
forever.
to be D'Alessandro's, I think, and it's now kind of shifted to Angelo's.
Oh, big major shit. And all the tourists get Angelo's now, too. And it deserves all the accolades. Excellent cheesesteak. One thing I like with John's Roast Pork is like
also Angelo's. We talk about like influencing matters. Why is that so big? Because Dave Portnoy went there and gave it a 9.2 for their pizza.
Literally,
it's like
And then after everyone had the pizza, they had the cheesesteak. Like, oh crap, the cheesesteak's better than the pizza.
Yeah,
like
I'm
seriously.
sure they had a line before, but it's like that's a direct influencer went
direct
there
influencer,
and it flipped on its head.
Right. So John's Roast Pork, amazing. And then we went to Calais and Fishtown because it's a new restaurant, James Beard Award. But like showcasing like the food in Philly and then also different price points too. Like Reading Terminal, you can go in and out and spend like $5 on a pretzel and have one of the best pretzels of your life. John's Roast Pork, $10 for a cheesesteak. Where you can go to Calais and spend like $100 a person on dinner. You're having all these different types of experiences all within the city, right? And it's like I just love being able to showcase. If you're coming from out of town, you can have whatever experience you want in Philly. It's not just cheesesteaks. It's not just the Rocky statue. Like, there's so much to do here outside of those things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's time. But yeah, this was an awesome conversation.
If you want to, we would love to have you back on. I think this
part two, right?
There's so much I feel like we haven't even began to touch on that. Like I'd be
we
so
talked
interested.
about stuff out there that we wanted to touch, and we didn't hit it. But yeah, I think there's a lot, of obviously connection between you and Brudat.
For sure.
Obviously, you're much bit larger at this point. But like everything that you do is like so clean. Everything like there's a reason why you're kind of where you're at. And,
I'll take it.
And it's it's good for everybody that like you're a good person. It's like it's not just like a big brand and like you're kind of an asshole. Like when I met you at Victory, it was like very much like you're very approachable. You're a real person, and I'm excited to kind of see where you're at in a couple of years. And
I'm excited to see where you guys are at.
Yeah,
let's talk about before we end. I want to talk about what you guys have coming up.
But
I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. So like as we talked about, we're working on this beer passport, beer crawl. Where in April 26th is when we're actually starting it, but we're having like 20 breweries in Philly that are going to be a part of this, and you get a free pour for whoever is a part of the passport. And it's great for everybody because we really want to just get people in the neighborhood familiar with their local beer breweries that are in the town. And it's great for the breweries that are going to get new people. And what we like to do is like bring in the young approach to it too. So I think that's a fun way to really get everybody involved in the beer scene and push local too.
I would love that. That sounds like a cool event. And it's gonna be North Philly this time, right? Or
it's gonna be all Philadelphia County. Wow. So anywhere, South Philly, we have North Philly. Yeah, just all Philly. Specifically Philly though.
Yeah, specifically. I mean, we were talking about some other stuff before. Maybe we'll talk about that next time you're on here.
Yeah, because I'm like so
neighborhood centric stuff.
Right.
I think there's a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What did you guys say? 160 breweries, like 30-mile radius or something.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It's insane. I know. Because I'm like, again, I was listening to the podcast, and I think you said that statistic, Rich, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
There's like no way.
Yeah. It's a lot, but it's. I mean, as much as breweries are going out of business, they're also opening up, and it's just like
absolutely.
It's Philadelphia's able to handle 160 breweries.
Oh, for sure. But then the fact that you had said in that same episode, it's like, how come people don't know about all of those 160 places, right? Like you ask someone, what are 3 breweries in Philly? They're going to say like Yards, Victory.
Maybe Love City.
Love City. Probably Evil Genius, they might say, because they have a lot of distribution out there. But it's like, there's 160, like for what you guys are doing with BrewDad. You're going to be like that, like marketing that a lot of breweries never had before,
Yeah, they never could have. Or, yeah, it's
the voice to the voiceless, the voice of the small breweries and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's almost like a subreddit on the entirety of Instagram of like, here's the subreddit of where you guys can put all your content and like just look here, like we'll point you in the right direction.
Right, like an encyclopedia of breweries in Philly. Yeah, that's exciting for sure.
Yeah, and it's fun. Hopefully, it gets to Jersey and. Who knows where the future is, but it's the local beer. So
exactly, focus on our neighborhood first.
Yeah, and there's a lot right here. So I'm excited.
Exactly. Cool. So again, Josh Eats Philly on all the
typically,
platforms.
where can we follow? Yeah, you
Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, if you want to.
Facebook.
And they have a website, JoshEatsPhilly.com. So
if you haven't heard of it already.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah, it has lots of great commercials. Then you can follow us at BrewDad and at the BrewDad Podcast. And you'll see you